You know, Rebels, if you've been checking out some of my promotional ads on social media, you will be aware that I have been using a lot of AI programs to help me create ads. But you know what? There's a lot more uses for AI than just funny little videos. And I'd like to introduce one of our new sponsors, Podium. It is a leader in creating AI tools for podcasters. Now, let's say you've got a podcast, or maybe you're even thinking of doing a podcast. You're probably wondering, well, how can AI be integrated with your workflow? I'll tell you about Podium. As a podcaster, you know that writing show notes and creating chapters and transcribing episodes takes a lot of time, and it can cost you a lot of money too. But you know what? That's where Podium comes in. It's an AI tool designed specifically for creators and podcasters with the goal of making post-production tasks quick and easy. And in just a few minutes, Podium generates show notes, chapters, summaries, clips for social media, a full transcript, suggested episode titles, social media posts, and more. Whew, that's a lot of work for one little program. Your show notes are key to your podcast's success because it helps new listeners find your podcast and they'll know if it's a fit for them. You know, kind of like Too Many Podcasts. It also improves your SEO, that's your search engine optimization. Ooh, big phrase there. And overall accessibility. And with Podium, you can focus on creating a great podcast and let Podium's AI do the heavy lifting. But Podium isn't just for solo creators and podcasters. It's a game changer for editors, producers, marketers, agencies, and production studios. Teams that use Podiums are able to increase workloads, decrease turnaround times, and improve their quality. How does it work? Very easy. First, go to Podium's website, and you'll see that link that's right there in the show notes. You get 3 hours free just to try it. Pretty cool, huh? And using that link also supports this show as well. And you know what else happens? Because I'm a good guy. You use my link, you will get 50% off for your first month. So visit the site, upload an MP3 file, and download your files, and that's it. And if you need anything else, you can use Podium GPT to generate articles and any marketing copy you might need in seconds. Instant show notes, transcripts, chapters for your podcast or channel. This will level up that podcast. So check out Podium today.
On today's episode of the Sherpa's Podcast Picks, it's a conversation with photographer Christinall Love. Christinall lives in the state of Alaska and has captured much of its scenery and wildlife in her photos. I'll bet you didn't know that the Sherpa has an extensive collection of wild animal photographs. You should see him sneak up with his camera to those stuffed animals.
Welcome to the Sherpa's Podcast Picks. It's the podcast about, podcasts. And now, coming to you from Mount Podcastia, here's your host who wonders what's on your podcast playlist, Jim the Podcast Sherpa.
Hello there, Rebels of the Sherpalution, and welcome to another episode of the Sherpa's Podcast Picks. You know, there are thousands and thousands of podcasts that are out there, and how are you going to know what you want to listen to and what you want to add to your podcast playlist? Well, enter me. Who's me? Jim the Podcast Sherpa. Of course, I am here coming to you from Sherpa Studios in the Sherpa Chalet high atop Mount Podcastia, where I overlook all of these podcasts that are out there, and I get to round up folks and get to talk to them, and maybe we can find something just for you. Yes, you, and you, and you, and, well, maybe not you with the hat. You know, you'll have to come back a little bit later. But anyway, we are here at the Sherpa Chalet, and usually you'll notice when I speak to people, I notice the location that they're coming from. And for today's episode, I spoke to a lady who's living in the state of Alaska. She wasn't born there. She actually grew up in there and lived there for quite some time. She is a photographer, and she also has a podcast, and you can imagine how that beautiful Alaskan scenery and wildlife probably influences her photography. And it does. Spoiler alert. And she also has a podcast about healing. This lady has had some multiple serious surgeries. She looked fine when I spoke to her, which was good, but she still deals with a lot of health issues and a lot of recurring surgeries, unfortunately. But she's got an incredibly positive attitude, which I really enjoyed. And I really like talking to her. Her name is Christinall Love, and you're going to hear that conversation right about now. Hello there, Rebels. We are in the chilly room here at the Sherpa Chalet. My guest today is a photographer with a podcast. about helping people too. And her name is Christinall Love. She is coming to us from Alaska. We have never had a guest from Alaska until now. So I say to you, Chris, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I feel honored to be the first Alaskan.
Were you born and raised in Alaska?
No, actually, I was born in Germany. I have a military family. My mom actually was on the technically non-military side, but my dad was military. So she was German, plus her dad was military as well, but she was born and raised there. But yeah, and then I ended up in Pennsylvania, Hershey, Harrisburg, and graduated from Palmyra high school, and ended up here like twice. So
you ended up there twice? How did you do that?
The first time in Alaska, I kind of ran away. They always say if you're coming to Alaska, you're either born here or you ran from something. So I actually ended up running from something, and then I left and went back to Pennsylvania, came back about 10 years later, and this time I'm stuck here forever. I absolutely loved the state before, but I loved it even more now that I got to explore it even more, in a different light.
I'm curious. I mean, being a photographer, it had to be the natural scenery there that must have really drawn to you as an artist.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I came here not knowing how to use a camera about 7 years ago. This is my second round. And I looked at my camera and at my door in my new house or in my new apartment. I said, got to be smarter than the device. And I wanted certain photos of like an eagle head, but I wanted my photos. I love everybody's art, I am such a supporter of it. Right. But I was like, I want to be so unique in my house that it's my art. I took the adventures. I did it, and I want the stories on my walls. So I wanted to make it like the fish in Alaska, but I would probably have a fish tank. I had one, but earthquakes happened.
Okay.
But but like I the bears, the moose, the eagles, the mountains, all of that. I have so many and airplanes and all kinds of stuff, different people, the cultures up here. But yeah, that's how I mainly started here with the photography. It keeps me here. I love hiking. So
it was interesting, and I was looking through your website, which we will get to in a little bit discussing. And so many of the pictures really just present like an intimate image of where you're living, even whether it's outside or even just on like faces of people or animals. And it's really interesting when you're looking like really close and you can almost kind of see what was going on in your mind when you took these photos.
Oh yeah, that's the goal. I like with my moose, any of the animals, for instance, my motto is, for art and photography, I have kind of two different mottos on this, but my motto I started off with, and I think I'm going to stick with it, is if it can make you smile, then it's all worthwhile. That's my main motto I started with. And I like those intimate moments. And I'm grateful that you got that, because a lot of people don't. I mean, I get, don't get too close, and all that stuff. I'm like, I want the story and the moment with the animal, and to show that they do have a smile within them, yeah, I'm safe and everything like that. But I wanted to bring out their voice too, their personality, and showcase that, and to show that they're not so evil as people perceive them to be. We're all capable of hurting something, but it's our choice to do it, and right. I've been with the bears, that they're the ones that taught me that lesson, actually, believe it or not. I have one that's, so the stories that I have are personal, like with my addictions and stuff like that. I went out into the woods instead of going out to drink, and then the bear came along and I was crying and I was like, oh, and he sat right in front of me. I mean, like I could reach and touch his face, and it was so close. And I looked up and I was like, oh, okay.
Hello.
We're doing it. Right. And then such a peace came over me, and everybody's like, you weren't scared? No, I was just shocked that a bear just sat right in front of me and decided to serve this animal, and those are the moments that I love, and I was like, okay, well, let me bring up my camera. And I was still a newbie, trying to figure out this ISO and shutter speed. And I was like, I don't care. But so I had the camera and I put it up to my face and he was right there. Great shot. then the camera was off. Like the lens was there. I was like, oh, so I was like, hold on. And I was like, everybody's looking at me like, what in the world is she doing? You know, like those little things. That's my moment. And I'll get out of a car in a heartbeat right now because I don't, I'm about to go into another surgery. I'm being careful on my surgeries, and with the things, there's like moose going in front of the cars and everything like that. So I have a random moose, just random. Giving a nice big old smile and being playful and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, and it's just going up there and just clearing my mind away from the trauma. And it healed me, it really gave me a good sense of healing too. So I wanted to showcase that in my photography and in my art, because I do paint and all that kind of stuff too. But this is home now.
Sure. So I guess we can presume that you've been relatively safe with your large animal encounters so far.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Don't do what I do because I'm not Timothy Tidwell, but I'm actually pretty safe with my stuff. You got to come in there right and knowing how to encounter the animals. That is the biggest thing that people miss, learning their cues. A bear, you have to give it respect. You look them straight in the eyes, and it may sound stupid. And I figured this out the hard way. But you look him straight in the eyes. And then if he does not give you the cue and let him let you in, then you're going to die. Yeah. So giving the bear respect and allowing him to explore, you could tell if they're kids, they're teenagers, they're, you could tell their differences if you really look at it and learn their personalities. And they will tell you there are certain bears in certain areas I don't go into, like McHugh Creek. Nobody goes there. If you go there, that's a death sentence. That's like a quote unquote bucket list that you're going to go. And the day you're going to die, or like your physical death date. I'm like, all right, well, I'll go check out the bears over there and climb that mountain. Yeah, no, it's the creepiest place. It's a beautiful place, but the creepiest, that feeling that you get and you're like somebody's watching you and all that stuff. I mean, people got eaten on the tree at the. I was like, oh boy, no, I'm good. Like just walking in the parking lot is the waterfall is beautiful. It was the main reason, but nope, absolutely not. So you have to learn your cues, learn your stuff, and learn to look up in the trees too.
Is it more learning where not to go as opposed to what not to go near? It's learning a little bit of both.
Yeah, I mean, it's learning your environment. Like the rocks or looking at the feces, the way that they are formed. It sounds disgusting, but like you could tell a moose was scared in the area, is scared off. So then, something else is around, besides the moose, because the feces would be a little bit scattered and it'll go a certain direction, or you could tell with the babies, you could tell, okay, so there's a mom and a baby somewhere. Like you can tell how they dealt with, just so knowing that the fecal stuff, learning the footprints that we have wolves in town. They're up on the upper hillside, which is still in town, but it's the rich people side. But wolves and porcupines and bears and what else we have, lynx, wolverines. We have all that kind of stuff. So just learning learning that, you'll be safer up here. Yeah, if you get that. You can't just go in there like a New Yorker, just random off the streets. You know what I mean? That mindset has to go. Like Alaska is totally different. Like, you have to be cleared out of that mindset in the lower 48. I've learned that lesson, and it takes about a good year to clear that out. Keep yourself, but also learn how to walk in Alaska and knowing that it's their land, not a human's land.
Yeah. So having grown up in Germany and in Pennsylvania, what should people know that Alaska is like really different about like the rest of probably the United States or even probably parts of the world in the time that you've been there?
The difference would be actually I would say the landscape and the animals, the encounters, the culture. It is a slower pace up here. Very, very rich in history. I mean, I can't wait to really dig into the history, like dig, and like a lot. And it's a newbie and as a state, technically, I think it's like a little over 100 years old, somewhere around there.
Yeah, not even,
So so just hearing the stories from the people who's lived here, doesn't matter what culture they're from, whether white, black, and native or whatever, they had those old school cars and there was dirt road right where I'm sitting, like not too long ago, you know what I mean? But it's more of a slower pace. And so everybody's bringing the stuff up from the lower 48 to here, the ways up here or to up here, but they're quickly getting distinguished. it won't last up. So they have to learn. And
I guess probably, given, the scenery that you're surrounded by, you really wouldn't want it to change that much anyway, or even that drastically. I mean, that probably, like I said, the view is probably what attracts you as a photographer. But, when if it gets too urbanized or anything like that, it's kind of like this isn't like the same magical place that you came to so many years ago.
Yeah, like the buildings. Mm-hmm. If it's a building that's going to work with the scenery, okay.
Right.
Putting up like a skyscraper or something, and it just messes up the view. Like on my balcony, I know this place, the neighborhood, I'm quote unquote in the hood technically, which I was here before, so like this was I like it here. It's the hood here is not like the hood in New York. Let's just put it that way. This is puppy dog.
Yeah.
Harrisburg and New York are the two that I can, this is puppy dogs. They have shootings and all that stuff here, but it's not really anything that I'm like concerned of, or like I gotta duck down out of a school still, you know what I mean? And like, because shots are going on every 2 seconds. I'm like, oh, y'all are idiots, but okay, so I'm going on my balcony, and I used to, there's a spot that I love. It's called Point Warren's off downtown. And there's an ocean downtown. I don't know who else can say that is having an ocean downtown with whales going through, and eagles flying by and then walking by, and then you're going to work. But the sunset over Sleeping Lady Mountain is absolutely amazing. And they're golden. Sometimes it sucks something. But watching it on my balcony from way out yonder, without the buildings, I remember it. Like you got the beautiful skies that are just clear, or the northern lights you can see, and all the stuff. And then I come back to the place, to the condo, and now the buildings they take away that view. I'm like, oh, there's no point in that. Like I don't like sitting on a balcony that's. This a building, and then a tip of a mountain. All right. Well, that makes no sense. Not, I'm like, oh, no. So yeah, no, that's why I like to go out, climb the mountain, and then just sitting on top of the mountain and then hearing, it's the purity, the air quality, absolutely different. The water quality, we drink glacier water, from Eklutna, and, but like coming here was McDonald's, that Frappuccino and the cappuccinos and stuff like that. I used to have to, but McDonald's would make me go to the bathroom all the time, right? Just run right through me like Taco Bell. Right? Well, I would always get a Frappuccino and all that stuff over at McDonald's in Pennsylvania. And then I come here, and then the product was so much better because the water was so much better. And I was like, oh, right. That's what that tastes like? That's what it's supposed to taste like? So yeah, the air, the food, the water quality, and the air quality, the purity, you don't feel so darkened, in the air, and stuff like that. So like, yeah, of course, in town a little bit, you feel it. There's a bridge that goes right into, for me, it's vacation. I still go to work and help somebody else at the house over, beyond this little bridge, but the ocean's there, the Potter's Marsh there, then you just on Seward Highway. And right at the bridge, I'm like, I breathe in and breathe out, and it's new air, like new purity. Nobody touched it, like new snow coming on, nobody, it's just pure. And that's the best part. That's what keeps me, is that pure air.
Oh, sure. And I think that is probably a common gripe of a lot of people, that wherever they may live, there are certain smells that, they just don't want to be surrounded by, and they don't have to be. But here you are, you're out in nature more so than most people, and you really get to appreciate the beauty of that.
Yeah, and it's great for healing. I had so much trauma in my life, and I'm not trying to say I don't like people, but because of the trauma, I learned over my years to not trust people or what they say or what they do, or I'm going to get beat up or whatever, so I needed somewhere to go that was safe. And for me, a bear is safer to go sit and have lunch with or going on the top of a mountain and be like, okay, my brain needs to rest. And I call it my no trauma allowed. I can hear the eagles, doing their thing and the fish, doing all that. And so I get to watch that, have lunch with the dull sheep on the top of the mountain, look at the ocean, wait for the whales if I see them, the seals and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, this is only 20 minutes away from my house. Why not? And go back, go out, go climb the mountain real quick, go to work, come back out, and then, do another climb if I wanted to. And that is one of the best parts of being up here, is being able to do that. And I was able to heal a lot faster, and especially after my surgeries too. 8 days after my surgery, I'm climbing a mountain. And I was like, I feel much better out here than sitting in my house, in my chair, feeling crappy about myself. No. So I take my camera out. That was another reason. I call it my phototherapy. So I have to make sure I'm bending and stretching and all that stuff. So, you got to run from a moose if you got to, or I'm bending down, I got a picture of a moose underneath, the baby, because the baby was abandoned. He was at my house. So now he's mine. So he stays around, and he comes around every so often. I don't know if you guys seen it in the news, but he was a Costco kid. I was like, great. Now you're messing with people at Costco. All right. So then you're going to come over here, and I gave him a lecture, but when he was a kid, he allowed me to go underneath of him with the camera. I didn't touch him, but I don't train him to like people too much, but just enough to where he had plastic on his nose and all that stuff, and people putting trash on the ground. He would get into all that. So you had to be able to take all that off of the baby, and, so I'm like, nope, you don't want to get killed. So step it back, and stuff like that. So it's a lot. It's a lot, and having to do that with all these surgeries and not being able to walk so well and all that, it gives me joy. That's where it goes.
And you also do a podcast as well. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I during the 2020, while I was at work at the extended care at the hospital, I was writing down out of nowhere the about this podcast, and I had no clue what in the world I was doing, but I needed to have the people's voices talking, testimonies, all of that stuff. I felt like everybody was wanting to be heard, but nobody was allowing them, because of some greediness or whatever it is that happens. They had a book, nobody's buying the book, and I would read the books and be like, this is really good. You know what I mean? It could really help people, or, something. And I was like, people are so greedy, so I was like, maybe if I have somebody, because if it's not in your town, because the worst people to support you is in your town, they know you, but there might be somebody else that you have no idea out in the world that it'll reach out to, whatever you have to say, whatever you have. And that might be your connection that you need, to be able to move forward and to be, to help you be the best version of yourself, whatever gifts that you have. I want to showcase it, and it helps us all, because things are raggedy right now in the world. So if we're just going to allow the gifts to go to the floor, what's the point? But if we're sitting there, we each that we can contribute, even a homeless person can contribute. They have a testimony to share, or they have hands that can help, whatever it is to help the next person. But it's just keeping the gifts flowing. And so we all can eat and we all can get through. We've seen 2020, right? So that is, you know what I mean? So we weren't supposed to be alone, but it felt like we were alone. But that's when my broadcast really kind of came about, was through that, is just making sure people's voices were heard, meeting people, whatever it was, that's mainly what it is. Yeah. So I've had some very interesting people. We've talked about divorce. We've talked about cancer. We've talked about acting. We've talked about directing. We've talked about all kinds of stuff. So between that and God, and, we were all, just panels and one-on-ones, and it just gives a chance to speak.
Sure. And everybody needs that voice to be heard, and at least you want to give them that platform, and also having to do a lot with healing as well, and having faith in yourself. tying
Right.
in with that as well.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it's funny when you're describing very vividly a lot of what's around you. You can kind of get a mental picture in our heads. And, this is an audio podcast, and hopefully the listeners are getting that as well. But I'm curious, is there any specific site that just does it for you? You look out and you see this, and it's just like all is right with the world. Is there a specific spot, or is it just really all around?
Like a specific place here in Alaska, or
yeah.
I have a couple favorite places.
Mm-hmm.
My main one, where I first started, is called Eklutna.
Okay.
And I call it ugly, ugly woods. And then once you get out of the ugly woods, it's absolutely gorgeous. Right. So, I mean, it's just ugly, 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 ugly. You just walk and then bam, you get hit with beautiful trees, the mountains, the picturesque. If it's a beautiful, beautiful day, a nice big blue day, the sun is setting right and the water's right there. And that's where we get our water too from. So, but there's no cell phones, no Google, nobody can call you. You're just out in the woods by yourself or with your people that you're with and stuff like that. But you can go for a walk. There's little creeks. There's, just different things. Bears can come through. You don't know who you're going to encounter, but you go down and you can enjoy the water. You could sit. And there was, when I first got here, there was teepees, like made out of wood and everything. Like the natives were actually, I have to find out. And I'm trying to find out if they're actually natives doing this, because it comes up every year. But the natives are still doing, certain things that they used to do back then. So like now it's kind of still historic, but yet I don't know who's putting these things out, and I am very curious about this. But the fact that they put it looks like it's lived in. First of all, it's literally a teepee, and they have benches made out of wood. The teepee's made out of wood. Then you have the things you cook in made out of whatever it is that's out there. And they used to. I remember that one of the natives had told me about. They used to walk miles, hundreds of miles, and then they would stop there, leave their boat there. And then they'd just keep moving. But it's a very interesting thing. But Eklutna is one of my favorites. Is where I can sit and just get rid of all my thoughts out of the world. I don't have to have noise. I don't put my phone on. I mean, yeah, it's with me. Of course, I take pictures, but I don't have to put music on. I don't do that because I like the fact that I like to hear and enjoy my place. And then there's Beluga Point. Right down the street from my house. And that's my spot. Anytime when I was here before, my mental health, that's where I would go. If something was really messy with me, with alcohol, drugs, or whatever, I just needed to get away from the people and the mess or the mental health unit or whatever was going on. That was my worst time. And I found that Beluga Point was the spot that I would go to. I'd look at the ocean, beautiful mountains, Dall sheep in the back, whales coming through, or whatever's, the train, Alaska train is picturesque on that end, coming through. And I'm like, okay, and then the waterfalls, and then I go back, I'd have a little talk with God and go back. I was like, and just stuff like that. And I found out Whittier's a good spot too. Mm-hmm. Going in, I don't know if you ever heard of there's a tunnel that goes through. It's a 2-mile tunnel, and it goes through the mountain, and a train and a car can go right through it. But it does it every 30 minutes. Each one will go, so it'll take 12 minutes to get through. And once you get through the mountain, you end up in this itty bitty little town. I mean, you can get through it within 5-10 minutes, just driving all the way up to the end of the road and come back. But it is waterfall galore. It is, I think it was the Prince William Sound, the boats when you go out into the boats. And definitely a bear country too. Everywhere is a bear country. But no, and it almost, there's like a little beach kind of thing that's there. We don't have beaches like,
right.
Like New Jersey, that stuff, we don't have that. We have beaches.
You have a shore, but it's not the traditional summer escape that people envision.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, okay. I mean, there is a spot in Kenai that it resembles, it has the sand, but and then the ocean and everything. We go dip net fishing and stuff like that is the best. But yeah, I mean, those little places get me a lot. I have my certain favorite, and Seward is my absolute favorite. I didn't get to go this year because I got tired of people being stupid on the road on the Seward Highway. So every day was somebody special, like having issues. So I got stuck on the highway for 4 hours. It was closed for 7.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was 11 days out of surgery too, out of neck surgery just recently. I was like, great, that's fun. So we were all stopped for hours on end, and I was like, well, I'm done. Like, that's not going to happen again. And then then I get stuck. My friend and I, we went dip net fishing that same week, right? And it goes down the Seward Highway too, but I'm not missing fishing, okay? And that's one thing I don't miss. So we went fishing, came back, and the car breaks down as I'm driving. So we're in the middle of Alaska on the most dangerous highway in the middle of the dark, and it was kind of, we could have gotten killed, but we were stuck on the highway. And we pulled over to the side of the road, and it's like, of course it had to happen this week, didn't it? So different things, but it was an adventure. I consider those adventures. I wasn't scared, but we had to wait for the tow truck driver to come because he had another customer that got stuck before us. And then it was raining on top of that. So, he had to go, he was like an hour and a half away from us. First of all, getting one customer, went all the way to Anchorage and then had to come all the way back. So he did a whole 3 hours technically just to get to us, and then had to drive us all the way back, which was another hour and a half. That's how much the tow trucks are. I mean, they go up the mountains. Their things are, I mean, they are, oh my gosh, they are awesome when it comes down to driving it out here and picking up people. But yeah, so yeah, that adventure was fun.
So before I let you go, Chris, where can people find out more about your work and see what you've up to and like your social media and everything like that? If you can let everybody know.
Let's see. My Facebook is Christinall Love. Just how it's spelled spelled correctly on my name. Facebook also has AK Love Travel and Hospitality Corp. CORP. I'm about to start putting that back up on because I do have the travel. I started a travel blog plus helping others find restaurants or whatever, and then I'm going to end up doing some more like people can travel with me eventually. But that they can look that up on Facebook, and they can look up AK Pure Love Photography on Facebook. And also my work is also on fineartamerica.com. They can look that up and buy work from there. I will have other websites, but Christinall Love, www.christinalllove.com is where you can literally find everything on there. And my YouTube is on there, Christinall Love 3574. So podcast is on there, different things, you got psychology class, there's notes there, there's kids stuff in there, making little ABC like that. So I do a lot of that stuff too. Oil Runners broadcasts on Facebook. So I'm re-upping all of that stuff and putting it all together even more, but it's there. So yeah, they can follow, like, share, comment on all that stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for letting us know, and just be careful around the moose. Okay. You be careful around the moose, and so will I.
Absolutely. I'll make sure I'll send you pictures.
Yes. Yeah. If I see one near my neighborhood, I'm either very lost or I've got to re-examine the rent that I'm paying. So, Christinall Love, thank you so much for coming by the show.
All right. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much, Jim.
Now it's time for Sherpa Samples. Got a podcast for the Sherpa to sample? Let us know and we'll mention your name on the show.
It is time for Sherpa Samples, and it is the portion of the show where I get to discuss some of the podcasts that I've been listening to that are on the podcast chart, so I can share them with you, and maybe there's some that you might want to check out. So I usually do about 10 a segment, so here are the 10 that I've been listening to. And some true story podcasts that I was listening to were In the Dark, which has to do with the military murder of Iraqi civilians, which really went uninvestigated, I guess, really up until this podcast. It is definitely very serious, In the Dark. And there was also Moral of the Story, which I got a kick out of. This is interesting. This is a woman telling all these tales to her husband about all these unusual stories that are true. And the episode that I listened to was about a Chinese billionaire who wanted to marry his daughter, and he was going to pay several $1 million to a person who was going to marry her. But there's a lot of twists and turns in that story itself, and the host does a really good job with the show. I found it a really interesting podcast. Scamtown was another interesting podcast, and the episode that I checked out had to do with the FBI investigating telemarketers and how they were scamming people. And they had the actual interview with the FBI agent who went undercover to do this. It was a really fascinating story. Very well done. 3 very real-life podcasts that were all very entertaining. As far as the true crime category was concerned, quite a few of those too. Who Killed Jennifer Judd? Jennifer Judd was a young bride who was going to bring her husband's lunch to him at his job, and before she got there, apparently someone got into the house and murdered her, allegedly. The police found this suspect who seemed to have known her, but they don't really know how much of the truth that this suspect is telling. The investigation really kind of unravels and I guess gets put back together till hopefully, ultimately, a murderer is found. Karen has to do with a woman who may have, or not may have, run over her husband and murdered him. The podcast discusses the relationship between the two people based on the views from a lot of people who knew her. Drowning Creek is another true crime podcast, which had to do with a young man in Georgia who disappeared, and they believe they know who made him disappear and his vehicle as well. But unfortunately, they can't find his body to prove that the young man disappeared. So what do they do? I guess you'll have to listen to find out. Story Warz is a comedy podcast. There are a group of comedians like Big J Okerson and Dan Soder. They seem to be around the heart of them. The guys who were in the Bonfire Sirius XM radio show. And they go on with a couple of other stand-up comedians, and they tell these stories, and the other comics have to guess whose life this story came from. So it sounds a lot funnier than the way that I'm describing it, but these guys definitely make it pretty interesting too. So they've got a lot of things going on. I think they were the same guys that did the Legion of Skanks podcast as well, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, we had a few that fall outside the realm of all of these. The Flightless Bird podcast is hosted by a guy named David Ferrier, who comes from New Zealand. And his podcast is about the curious things that make America what it is. And this episode was pie. And what is the American fascination with pie? And he goes to a lot of pie festivals and tries a lot of pies and all sorts of stuff. It's very well done, and they discuss a lot of interesting topics in this podcast. The Curious History of Your Home. This is almost told like a documentary, and it's about all of the different parts of the house and the household and their history. And the episode that I listened to was about your windows. And windows apparently have a really lengthy history throughout history. And the important part that they played in and how they came to be and so on and so forth. And it's done very much in the style of a BBC documentary. And finally, the Wirecutter Show. This is a look at tech and discussion of all things mechanical. The episode that I caught was about laundry and, you know, what machines are efficient, how you should do your wash so it's the best way. And I learned a lot when I was doing that. And, I see some bubbles in the distance in the Sherpa Chalet in the laundry room. I think I better turn off the machine before things start flooding. So why don't we head on into the outro?
Let's get back to the Sherpa. Sorry about that.
No!
A very special thanks to Christinall Love for swinging by the Sherpa Chalet all the way from Alaska. And also, thank you to you for spending some time and checking this show out. You know, I'd love to hear what podcasts are on your podcast playlist, so why not drop me a line on Sherpalution on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I think that's it. Yeah, that sounds like it. And I would love to hear what you're listening to. And also, just to let you know, on Saturdays, we do our Sherpa Selects, which are basically the best of episodes from our first 6 seasons. So you'll get the opportunity to hear a lot of our earlier stuff as well, when we were secretly known as Too Many Podcasts, by the way. And you can hear us on podcast apps everywhere, as well as the Sherpalution YouTube page. So that is going to do it for me. Again, thanks so much for coming by, and I'll see you next time. Until then, viva la Sherpalution!
Thanks for listening to the Sherpa's Podcast Picks. The podcast is now over. Please disperse and tell everyone about us. As long as they don't put us back in jail. Viva la Sherpalution!